Dune is one of the foundational franchises in the sci-fi genre. Frank Herbert's galaxy-encompassing, millennia-spanning saga of space witches and spice prophets revolves around the existence of a single non-human entity. The Fremen call it Shai-Hulud, Old Father Eternity, Grandfather of the Desert, but we know it as the Great Sandworm. Shai-Hulud is a unique creature in that it grows to sizes that should be impossible for it to reach and creates a substance that the universe becomes dependent on. As the only organic source for the spice melange, the sandworms are crucial for imperial commerce and transport, but the fact that it isn't found anywhere else in the universe and can grant prescient powers to select individuals begs the question, are sandworms aliens? If yes, where did they come from? And if no, then where are the aliens of Dune? In this video, we'll answer both of those questions, but before we get too deep into it, we have a very quick request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The basis of Dune is exploring humanity. Frank Herbert and the Fermi Paradox. Although there is no evidence that he was influenced by this particular scientist's work, Frank Herbert inadvertently created Dune in the image of the Fermi Paradox. Fans of the three-body problem will be familiar with this particular concept, but for those of you who don't know what it is, the Fermi Paradox poses the single greatest question with regards to extraterrestrial life. In the summer of 1950, Italian-American physicist Enrico Fermi was engaged in casual conversation about contemporary UFO reports and the possibility of faster-than-light travel with fellow physicists Edward Teller, Herbert York, and Emil Konopinski while the group was walking to lunch. The conversation moved on to other topics until Fermi later blurted out during lunch, "But where is everybody?" His peers laughed at his out-of-the-blue question, but all of them knew he was talking about extraterrestrial life when he spoke of everybody. Fermi went to produce calculations and equations that ultimately resulted in him concluding that, based on the trajectory of life on Earth, the universe itself should be teeming with life. Human history was but a few thousand years old, but the universe was billions of years older than that. Based on the amount of time that had passed and the number of Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone, Earth should have been visited by aliens at some point in history. And yet there's no evidence that this has ever happened. If the universe is theoretically meant to be full of life, then where is it? And if humanity is in fact unique in its existence, then what does that mean for evolution? Well, in Frank Herbert's universe, it means that humans end up pushing the boundaries of evolution to the point that they become aliens themselves. Frank was deeply interested in exploring the endless potential of the human entity, be it physical, mental, or spiritual. In Dune, the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood represents the peak of organic biochemistry manipulation. They can de-age themselves, determine the sex of their children, neutralize poisons within their bodies, use their voice to control people, and a bunch of other cool stuff that makes them seem more like witches than cutting-edge humans. The Bene Tleilax have undergone centuries of genetic experimentation to end up with an appearance that's more alien-like than human. They have smooth oval faces, a widow's peak, fang-like teeth, pitch-black eyes, and metal gray skin. They look a lot like the goblins from the Harry Potter films, except they're a lot taller and have pug noses. Their face dancers have so many extra muscles and nerve endings in their bodies that they can imitate any form of any living human, but even their natural state feels disturbing and alien. Just look at Sister Theodosia's true face. And their women have been grossly mutilated into becoming living incubators for the creation of zombie clones and, eventually, melange. The Spacing Guild's navigators are perhaps the most alien-like creatures in all of Dune because they look like something straight out of All Tomorrows. They have webbed hands and feet, and their heads are much larger than they should be, but their appearance is a result of their bodies being saturated in spice at all times, not a merger with some sort of alien entity. All of these unique groups and organizations are comprised of humans that evolved beyond the confines of natural limitations. Every act taken by any character in Dune is a human act, which makes its impact on the universe that much more adverse in nature. Frank disliked organized religion and charismatic messianic figures, so he framed his saga in such a way that everyone who put faith in such people ended up suffering horrifying fates. The only thing that will be responsible for humanity humanity's extinction is mankind itself, so there's no need to introduce alien entities in a story trying to convey that message. He could have easily made the Kwisatz Haderach an alien plotline and Paul an extraterrestrial figure, but he didn't because he needed his story to be human. This doesn't mean that he didn't toy with extraterrestrials, because his greatest creation seems to be evidence of alien life. The Sandworms of Arrakis might not operate highly advanced technology or even speak, but there's something that is often said of aliens as well. They're not of this world. The Sandworms are the only aliens in Dune, and there's proof. The Great Sandworm of Arrakis is the most important living entity in the known universe because it's the source of its greatest resource, spice. Spice improves immunity, elongates lives, and allows safe space travel across the universe. It makes the economic wheel turn and unlocks the prescient eye of those who are sensitive to such things. The Sandworms are worshipped as a manifestation of God by the Fremen because, in a way, it gives their people godlike powers. The Fremen are one of the few cultures in the universe that have their own version of a Reverend Mother. The history of their Sayadinyas extends all the way back to when they were the Zen Sunni wanderers living on the planet Rawsak, and it's possible that the tradition of wild Reverend Mothers was actually a Bene Gesserit plant. After all, the Lisan al-Gaib and Mahdi myths were their doing, so it's not a stretch to think that maybe creating wild Reverend Mothers was a part of this plan. One of the signs of the Lisan al-Gaib's emergence was the arrival of an off-worlder on Arrakis, who would be the son of a Bene Gesserit sister. The Missionaria Protectiva aims to give the Sisterhood ultimate protection on each planet it is seated within, so maybe Fremen Sayadinyas were their creation as much as their Mahdi was. But we're getting slightly off track here with what we actually wanted to say. The fact that they had Reverend Mothers of their own meant that the Fremen were one of the few people in the universe to be aware of prescience, and this power could only be one thing in their minds: a gift from God, given to them through the body of Shai Hulud. The Fremen managed to perfect the art of extracting the water of life from a young maker when harvesting spice was a major headache for the rest of the Imperium, and they believed that the Sandworms were native to Arrakis. To be completely fair to them, when they reached the planet as the Zen Sunni wanderers and the 100 slaves that escaped Porterin with Ishmael, the Sandworms were already there. The first worm rider, Salim, was born shortly before the Butlerian Jihad, and it was his tribe that eventually evolved into the Fremen as we know them. But in Children of Dune, we learn that the Sandworms are not, in fact, native to Arrakis. When Paul's son, Leto II, goes into the desert in search of the legendary Jakurutu tribe and an answer for why he'd been given his prescient powers, he has a moment of clarity that surpasses any his father ever experienced. Through one of his prescient visions, Leto realizes that the Sandworms were actually a migratory species, that they'd been brought to Arrakis by someone. Back then, Dune was a wet planet with lushness covering its entire surface, but when the Maker was loosed upon it, it turned Arrakis into the desert. Leto doesn't say who brought them and with what intention, but he does know that in doing so, the sandworm species managed to survive. Well, we're not being entirely accurate when we say that, because Leto said that the sand trouts that matured into sandworms were not native to Arrakis. Sand trouts are small, diamond-shaped, insect-like creatures that are described as being half plant and half animal by Frank Herbert. The reason we called them that was because of their propensity to seek out and suck up water for nutrition. They evolved from the microscopic sand plankton that resides within the sands of Dune and is part of an adult sandworm's diet. They have only one notable physical feature apart from their leathery, featureless bodies: their tentacle-like cilia. Sand trout are usually harmless and are often found in Fremen sieches where children play with them, using them as gloves or makeshift maces. An individual sand trout can never become a sandworm, but when dozens of them gather around a body of water and interlock their bodies with one another, they end up evolving into Shai Hulud. This is the closest thing to an alien entity that we ever hear of in Dune, because the sandworm's life cycle is unlike anything that originated on planet Earth. It starts life as many separate organisms that turn into this hive mind that doesn't possess sentience but does produce the most important resource within the universe. The Dune franchise doesn't rule alien ecology out of the Fermi paradox because there are so many organic things in it that possess strange powers. Sandworms. In God Emperor of Dune, Leto II outright states that while lower-level organic life like flora and certain kinds of fauna had been found in the universe, there had been no contact with intelligent life thus far. So, while alien life exists, there is no sentient alien life in the universe. And even the people who seeded the Sandworms on Arrakis were just that, according to Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, people. Long before spacefolding was discovered or any of the great powers of the Imperium came into existence, there was a group of people called the Muad'Ru. These people went from planet to planet, inscribing prophetic words on the surfaces they could get their hands on, and then moving on to the next. The Muad'Ru's ancient prophecies helped humanity win the Butlerian Jihad in a way, because the Jihad's Grand Patriarch, Iblis Ginjo, used information he had deciphered from a Muad'Ru text to further his cause. In Paul of Dune, Paul takes another character into a chamber buried deep within the desert, and one of a design somehow more ancient than Fremen architecture. There, he claims that the sand trout were brought to Arrakis by the Muad'Ru, and these mysterious precursor prescience wielders had something to do with his Fedaykin name, Muad'Dib, as well. As for where they might have brought them from, most people in the fandom think that it could have been Ikaz. Ikaz is home to some of the most peculiar flora in the universe. It is the source of the juice of Sappho, the drug that the Mentats take to keep their computational abilities on point. It is the source of Verite, the drug that the Bene Gesserit use to assist their truth-saying. It is home to the mysterious fogwood, which can be given any shape that a human mind can think of, provided it's in contact with their skin. So it wouldn't be much of a surprise that Ikaz is where the sand trout first came from. But then that begs the question, why didn't Ikaz turn into a proto-Arrakis? It could be that they didn't come from Ikaz, or the conditions on Ikaz weren't fitting to establish a sandworm life cycle. Once the Imperium realized that spice was a product of the sandworm, many great houses and powerful organizations tried reproducing them on other planets. They failed, of course, because only one planet manages to become the second Dune, and that happens 15 millennia later. But what we're trying to say here is that the Muad'Ru must have known something about the symbiotic nature of the sandworms, because soon after seeding them on Arrakis, they disappear from history. If there were a group of people that could reveal the location of the sandworms' original home planet, it was them. They were said to have spread themselves far and wide throughout the cosmos before the days of even the Old Empire, but somehow they just vanished into the fog of history and left only the sand trout and Paul's name as their legacy. Thousands of years later, Leto II used those sand trout to create a living stillsuit for himself, which in turn generated all the spice he'd ever need to unlock perfect prescience. He becomes the first and only hybrid of his kind until we meet Futars amphibians down the line. Leto's connection with the sand trout is so fundamental that when he dies, a pearl of his consciousness is preserved within each of them. This leads to the resurgence of sandworms on Arrakis, but these new worms are more intelligent and therefore more dangerous than their predecessors. We still don't know exactly why the spice has the power that it does, but that power, combined with Leto's consciousness coursing through them and the sand trout's off-Arrakis origins, make the sandworm the only true aliens of the Duneverse. But just because there aren't any other bipedal creatures in it, that doesn't mean humans aren't prepared for the possibility of meeting an alien. One of the reasons the Great Convention banned the use of atomic weapons but allowed great houses to stockpile them was the prospect of establishing contact with a dangerous alien species. Humans wanted to be ready in the event that a species like the Trisolarians tried to threaten them with oppression and extinction, but this was just an excuse to keep the other great houses from using their nukes for personal gain. In reality, mankind never expected to come across another species like itself until it discovered a new planet a millennium after the fall of the God Emperor. Did humans ever actually make contact with aliens? The Crompton Ruins. The Dune Encyclopedia is a great read, and Frank Herbert approved of its creativity more than its canonicity, but the one part we're sure he would have loved to keep the same is the section about the Crompton Ruins. In universe, the Dune Encyclopedia was written many eons after Leto's death, after humanity exploded to the stars and expanded far beyond the Milky Way. The power vacuum left in the Old Imperium by Leto's demise and the scattering was filled by the Ixians, the Tleilaxu, the Bene Gesserit, and the Spacing Guild. But the last of those was only ever concerned with two things: navigation and spice. Even though their entire economy system had been upended for centuries through Leto's interference, the Guild didn't stop looking for new planets. In the year 14,701, a scouting ship from the Guild, which was sent out to study the system of Sooterror 4041, came across a planet that was more or less suitable for human inhabitation. This ship sent word back to the Guild, and the Guild decided to investigate this new world in more detail, hoping to gain influence on the fringes of the Duneverse. What they found on their return a year later was a planet devoid of sentient life, but with evidence of its existence at some point in the distant past. That evidence came in the form of a gigantic artificial structure, a kilometer across and 10 stories high, which could have only been built by a species of creatures that possesses intelligence. News of this contact event would spread rapidly across the universe because it was the first time humanity had found something that they hadn't created. The Spacing Guild sent in 5 Highliners replete with researchers and resources to do a thorough inspection of the structure and contact its creators if possible. But they soon realized that their discovery was actually a rediscovery. The archaeologists that worked on the Crompton ruins found several structural and aesthetic similarities between it and another discovery that would change human perception on a fundamental level: the No Room constructed on Arrakis by Leto II to hide his spice hoard. Apart from a missing 8th floor and a bunch of height variations between the other floors and ceilings, the Crompton ruins and the Dar es Balat Hoard storage unit were one and the same. The Arrakis finds are brought to light a millennium after the discovery of the Crompton ruins, when Reverend Mother Darwi Odrade stumbles across the No Room during her mission on Arrakis, but it shelved all the previous human excitement of coming into contact with aliens. People realized that the Crompton ruins were just another version of Ixian No Rooms, something Leto II was deeply interested in. Despite enforcing the tenets of the Butlerian Jihad across his empire, Leto himself flouted them with the use of his dictatel because he knew that ultimately, fear of a thing was what gave it control over it. Leto used artificial intelligence to record his real-time thoughts upon Redulian crystals, which he then buried with the Dar es Balat Hoard, hoping that one day mankind will hear and understand his true message. The scientific community pretty much gave up on looking for aliens after that and started questioning why the God Emperor had created such a structure on the fringe of the universe. Crompton had no strategic or resource-based importance to it. It was pretty much an uninhabited wasteland at the edge of the known universe before the No Room was constructed on its surface. The team of archaeologists investigating the ruins found no evidence of any physical or digital objects remaining within, so we can never know its true purpose for sure, or whether it was even made by Leto himself. The only reason that he's given credit for the Crompton ruins is that they look an awful lot like his own No Room on Arrakis. There is no evidence besides this to link him to it, so it's possible that Leto did in fact build the Crompton ruins as part of his golden path. The Spacing Guild forever scratched his head with regards to how he accomplished this without their help, because he would need full space technology to ship the construction materials and crew to Sooterror 4041, but he never reached out to them. What we think happened here is that either Leto or the Ixians used the planet Crompton as a testing field for the latter's no technology. The Crompton ruins were at least 3 to 5 millennia old, according to the structural tests conducted by the Guild, so they would fall in the timeline where Leto and the Ixians were both working on ways to avoid the prescient eye. If Leto is not involved in the ruins' creation, then the Ixians have to be, seeing as they're the only ones with the technology to do it. It also makes sense that they'd choose such a distant, undiscovered planet to set up a No Room, because the further you keep your top-secret projects from your enemies, the better off you'll be. And though the Ixians secretly traded and built structures and machines for the God Emperor, they wanted to kill him just as much as the rest of the Imperium. It's possible that the Crompton ruins were some sort of early No Room prototype that ended up being abandoned once the Ixians saw that it worked. But that's about the best theory we can give you guys on their origins, which, sadly enough, are definitely rooted in human effort. With the debunking of the Crompton mythos, there was no other path for sentient aliens to enter the Duneverse, but for a brief time, there was hope. And after the tyranny of the God Emperor, any kind of hope felt like a good thing, even if it was for the unknown. Aliens being missing from Dune feels like a discrepancy in the beginning, but as you become more familiar with the story, you realize there could be nothing more appropriate. And that's why we call the Maker the closest thing to sentient alien life. Bless him and his water, because without his passing through the sands of Arrakis, humanity would have never unlocked the power to probe their history as well as their future. They'd have chalked every inexplicable thing up to an act of God or an act of extraterrestrials, and you guys should know by now that's exactly the kind of story Frank was avoiding. In the end, we think he created something far more interesting than bipedal aliens, because it's the unknown associated with the Sandworms that makes them such an important important part of the Duneverse's fabric. Not every question needs an answer, and not every answer fits the question. That's exactly how alien life works in Dune, and we hope we've answered all your questions regarding the same because... marvelous verdict! That's all we got for you guys for this video. Where do you think the sandworms come from, and are they alien in your eyes? If so, why? And if not, same question. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below because we'd love to foster this debate on our channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Dune content. We'll see you guys in the next one, so until then, stay safe and make sure you check your archaeological findings against existing structures before announcing their alien nature, because you don't want to be the guy giving mankind that hope and then snatching it away from them, right? It's bad news, trust us.